Coming to you from Brick House in downtown Brooklyn, this is 112BK. On the show today, an activist talks about law enforcement profiling and the LGBTQ community. And we'll find out what the folks at Barclays Center are doing for our community with its outreach program. Hi, thanks for joining us. I'm Ross Tuttle, filling in for Ashley Ford. I know a lot of people are talking about the census, spending a lot of energy on it, a lot of ink, and the addition of the citizenship question in our next one in 2020. People are freaking out, and they should be. By all accounts, the question will depress participation, especially among ethnic minorities and immigrant communities, which is bad for all the reasons that I don't need to restate here. What's worse is that the administration's expressed reason for adding the question to the census is pretty much a lie. Again, I refer you to the media accounts that explain that in detail. But here's the thing. There's a real chance the citizenship question won't even make it on the census. 12 states and counting, including New York, are suing the administration over this. It's unconstitutional, needs the approval of Congress, et cetera, et cetera. And the White House, I don't think they actually care. Actually, they might even prefer it that it doesn't make it on the census. But the damage is already being done. The communities the administration wishes to underrepresent were already highly suspicious of this administration. Now I'm guessing they'll trust them even less, meaning depressed participation is almost assured, so mission accomplished. But here's the mad and perhaps unwitting genius of this ploy. Like a lot of things with Trump, it's not a serious proposal. It's simply meant to draw a line between citizens and non-citizens just to vilify the latter. It's also meant to distract us perhaps from other more meaningful issues. But never mind the fact that it preys on the general ignorance of what the census is actually for. And let's be honest, this is probably the most attention most of us have ever paid to it. So when those litigious liberals strike down something that smacks of America first, like the travel ban, the America Firsters are going to get worked up. It's called animating the base. It's also called a win-win. The one upside that I can see is that we're getting a civics education as we stand in opposition to this administration. For instance, I never really knew that the ACS, or American Community Survey, our other semi-regular census, already includes a citizenship question, which makes it possible not to include it on the big one. So let's keep learning. Knowing more about how our government works, or doesn't work in this case, is one way to ensure something like this administration never happens again. On the show today, we've been talking about fears of deportation among the immigrant population in the U.S., but there's one community that feels underrepresented even in this conversation: LGBTQ immigrants of color. We'll speak with someone about the perils they face when it comes to law and immigration enforcement. Then, when Barclays Center went up, there was a deal with the city that they'd give back to the community. We'll speak with the Brooklyn Nets rep about some of those efforts. But first, these things. You've probably heard the initials SVU, Special Victims Unit, at least on Law & Order. Given the show's 10,000 consecutive seasons, I'm guessing you've caught an episode here or there. But what about the NYPD's SVD? That's what the unit is actually called. Now they're getting some attention. Not for cracking cases with super deft instincts and aplomb, but because the city's Inspector General just came out with a report that the SVD is understaffed and under-resourced, meaning that sex crimes aren't getting the attention they need. To put it in perspective, in 2017, the Adult Sex Crimes Unit Division had 67 detectives working on 5,661 cases, while at Homicide, they had 101 detectives working on just 282 cases. So victims, which feature prominently in those initials, have suffered with unresolved cases and hours-long waits in ERs, hoping investigators will show up. The Inspector General had already suggested increasing staff back in 2010. In the latest report, after those suggestions went unheeded, the IG suggested adding 21 more detectives in the Brooklyn squad alone. We'll keep you posted on any developments. Now, like SVD, I'm sure this next organization, known by its initials, wouldn't want to be getting the attention they're receiving recently. But something called NXIVM is now in the news. Its leader, Keith Raniere, was just arrested in Mexico, extradited to Texas, and will soon make his way to Brooklyn for arraignment in the Eastern District Federal Court on charges of sex trafficking and sex slavery. Raniere, also known as the Vanguard, no, that doesn't sound like a name of a cult leader or anything, is the co-founder of NXIVM. Am I saying that right? It sounds like a Roman numeral, which is supposed to be a self-help group with opportunities for mentoring. But the federal indictment alleged that the mentoring included joining a slave master club, branding people with a design that included Raniere's initials, again with the initials, and coercion via threats of having personal information released and assets stolen. There were also allegations by women of being forced to have sex with Raniere. I'm sure we'll be hearing more about this in the coming weeks and probably seeing it on Law & Order. Yesterday, we talked about State Senator Martin Golden's staffer, Anthony Testaverde, who'd shared Facebook posts comparing Democrats and gun control advocates to Nazis, and how challengers for Golden's Senate seat had called for Testaverde's firing. Well, today we report that Testaverde is, quote, no longer employed by Golden's office, according to a statement. It's not clear if he resigned or was fired. In January, Golden received some other unwanted attention when he said that opioids were no longer just a ghetto drug. According to reports, that seemed to be his way of saying, okay, now it's time to take this epidemic seriously. Coming up, our first guest. Perhaps no community faces more gender-based violence and police profiling than Black LGBTQ immigrants. We're not even out of March yet, but so far in 2018, at least 7 transgender people have been murdered in this country. Among the organizations fighting back on this issue is the Black LGBTQIA+ Migrant Project. And here to tell us more is one of the project's co-founders, Audu Kadiri, a longtime community organizer and trans-inclusive advocate. Welcome to 112BK.
Thank you.
So these are tough times to be an immigrant in the United States, probably to put it mildly. Perhaps even tougher for the population that you represent. Can you tell me about that population, who those people are, and the kinds of things that they're facing?
Yeah, actually, the Black LGBTQ Migrant Project, look out for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, gender non-conforming, queer, intersex community. Because right now in this country, like you rightly pointed out, being Black is a big challenge in this country. Now, being Black and LGBT, it's double challenge. Now, imagine being Black, LGBT, and immigrant. It's a whole lot of issues that this community is facing right now.
So what prompted you to co-found this organization? What were you seeing in your community? What were people bringing to you? What issues were kind of coming up?
Actually, this project started as a means of, of a vacuum that was there, trying to, make space for the Black LGBT immigrants. Now, there's no organization serving this population, as far as I know. And, there's no any organization serving this group. And we created this just to, create a community, to create a community and see to the challenges that we face. Right. How do we address the challenges from, Black profiling, LGBTQ, homophobic, tendencies and attitudes, then the hate, against Black immigrants. Now, recently, a lot of Black LGBTQ immigrants have come into this country because of the challenges they are facing in their country. Right. Most recently, maybe not most recently, in 2014 to be precise, countries like Uganda and Nigeria, passed laws that criminalize same-sex marriage.
Criminalize just being homosexual.
Just being homosexual, criminalize them, And a lot of these people flee to this country to seek refuge. Right. And they come here, it's hard for them to connect to free legal services. They are being detained, they still face the kind of hardship they were running from. Right. So these are the kind of issues we've been hearing, police brutality, and there's no community to run to. Right. So this exactly what led to the coming together of some of us to say, okay, you know what, we can create a community to try and address some of these issues based on our expertise, our connections, and experience.
Well, there's been a history of LGBTQ community members or individuals being kind of persecuted by the NYPD. I think that's been known, but I wonder nationally if you're perceiving there to have been a change in this current administration since how many years has it been? I guess only a year.
The change I will say I see is from getting from bad to worse. Most recently we've been getting, information from, Texas, California, whereby Black LGBT immigrants who comes here to seek asylum are being detained. How else do you explain that. Somebody who's coming here for protection is now facing more hardship, being detained. And detention is not a place that is rosy, you know. So imagine the trauma they will be going through at that point. And we've had cases of people who are seeking asylum, and at the point of interview, they have been detained. You know, so for me, there's been, you know, going from bad to worse since this administration, you know.
Well, speaking of that detention, I mean, what are some of the conditions, I mean, or, you know, I guess the traumas being experienced by transgender individuals in these detention centers? I mean, I imagine for them it's got to be exponentially worse.
Yeah, I mean, it's worse, like you put it. It's worse because they don't acknowledge that transgender people have rights, you know. Just recently we heard about the president, you know, hitting out on transgender people, saying all sort of things about them not being qualified to be in the military, you know. And that goes down to, you know, even other areas in the schools right now. They've been targeted. Right. They cannot use the same, you know, facility that they are supposed to. They cannot use facilities that, you know, transgender people are supposed to use. Right. You know, so a lot of challenges, even in the detention. That goes down to the detention centers too. A trans woman is not given, you know, her right. A trans man is not given his right, and that is not right. You know, so this needs to be looked into, and I think the government and whoever is in charge needs to understand that these people have rights to, you know, who they want to be. Right. Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure you followed the news recently. This isn't necessarily just an LGBTQ plus issue, but the news today that Liberia's temporary protected status was revoked.
That was a DED.
Right, their DED, which DED stands for their deferred enforcement of deportation, right? Yeah. I don't know how your organization has had to respond to that, or if you're getting a lot of people coming to you saying, okay, what do we do now? How can we protect ourselves? What can we do to advocate for these individuals?
Yeah, you know, I work with, aside being part of the BLMP, I work with African Communities Together as a community organizer. And this is one of the issues we've been, you know, advocating for a very long time. And when we heard recently, was it yesterday?
I think it was, yeah, in the past 24 hours.
Yeah, you know, it came out that, you know, DED was ended, and they were given 1 year to still be in status. But that is not enough. Even this 1 year was as a result of our advocacy, my organization, that's African Communities Together, to ensure that you don't just take away, you know, status from people who've been here for close to 20 years. Right. So what happens to them all of a sudden? Where do you want them to go back to? They have children in this country. Right. Do you want to, you know, separate them from their children? So we put out a you know, a response to that. African Communities Together, we did that because we have a lot of members who are recipients of this relief, you know, and this is an immigration relief that a lot of our members have enjoyed. So it's even that itself is a devastation within the community.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess that takes us back, I mean, again, looking at more at the community and the immigrant population more broadly, which you are working with and serving with your other organization. What are you sensing from people? I mean, is there a climate of real, genuine fear, like that any day somebody will come knocking at their door?
Yeah, there's a genuine fear, you know, because one of the services we provide at African Communities Together is, and actually African Communities Together is a partner with BLMP. You know, one of those things we do is connect people to free legal services, you know, and presently we've been going to detention centers to represent LGBTQ people, you know, and the genuine fear that you mentioned, it's very genuine, and we've had cases of people, like I said earlier, being detained at the asylum interview, LGBTQ people being detained at the detention center for just, you know, coming here to seek asylum, And we've seen a lot of cases of deportation.
Right. Well, there is really a well-founded fear, I mean, which is what's required for asylum in this country. But if you're leaving a country that criminalizes, you know, any LGBTQ status, that, you know, coming here would be a refuge, you would hope.
Yeah.
But that doesn't seem to be the case right now.
That's not the case right now, because the fears are being compounded.
Yeah.
You know, this started right from when this new administration came in. You know, there was a lot of fears within the LGBTQ community, within the African community generally. There was a lot of fear. You know, because of the kind of services we provide, we get a lot of calls, we get a lot of, you know, calls, and people come to our office to like, what's going to happen? I'm afraid. I can't even walk freely on the street. What's going to happen? You know, but what we did at that time was to try to develop a short training, you know, a know your right training for different communities and how to be safe. So
we just had a lawyer on the show who came on the show to talk about Dreamers and the you know, not insignificant challenges they're facing to deal with their status. But can you talk about sort of the heightened challenges for the community that you work with, the LGBTQ plus community, in ensuring that they can live here comfortably and happily?
Yeah, you know, like I said earlier, you know, coming here as LGBTQ person and facing challenges with back home, coming here, it's hard for Black LGBT person to connect to lawyers, to pro bono lawyers. These are people who left home without anything. These are people who left all they've worked for, all they've labored for, to come seek refuge. And they come here, there are no resources. As an asylee in this country, you don't have any resources. As a refugee, you come here, you already have a status. But as an asylee, coming through the border, it's a challenge. Even being in the country, it's hard to get a lawyer, like I said. So what we are doing to ensure that people are safe and they have you know, access to services is, one, connecting people to pro bono lawyers. We do that at ACT. We connect a lot of people. We put African communities together. We've been to detention centers to represent LGBTQ people, and we try also to ensure that people get the right information so that to keep them safe. Just
in the 10 seconds we have left, if somebody who's tuning into this wants to get in touch with your organization, what's the best way to reach out? Yeah, we have
a space on TLC's website, as Transgender Law Center. We have a space on their website, and we have a Facebook page, BLMP. That's Black. Yeah, we have a BLMP Facebook page. That's Black LGBT Migrant Project Facebook page.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on and help to shed some light on this, I guess, issue that maybe is a little bit underrepresented in the media today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
When construction of the Barclays Center won approval as part of the larger controversial Atlantic Yards development, it was far from a universally supported decision. Understanding that many Brooklynites opposed it, the city government placed some conditions on the developer and the occupants. There was a requirement for the construction of affordable housing, for example, union jobs for locals, and community outreach. Our next guest is going to tell us about the last one, what the Brooklyn Nets are doing to be good citizens on and off the court. He's the Vice President of Marketing for Brooklyn Sports and Entertainment, the management arm of the Nets. Welcome to the show, Marcus Minifee.
Thank you very much. Pleasure being here.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to have you here. You're our neighbor. I'm surprised we didn't have you on sooner.
I know. We should have met way before now, right?
Exactly. We'll have you back. We'll definitely have you back. So you've got, I understand you've got 2 decades of experience with the NBA. How did you kind of wend your way to Brooklyn?
Well, yeah, I've been blessed to work with some great companies and brands in my past. I'm from Chicago originally, but I've been in Brooklyn for almost 12 years now. I worked for the Chicago Bulls for about 7 years. And
you said off camera during the heyday?
Yeah, during the heyday. I worked for Kraft Foods. I worked for Pepsi. It's what kind of brought me out this way. Okay. I met my wife and we moved out here eventually from Chicago. Worked for Adidas and for Samsung, and now I'm with the Brooklyn Nets. So it's kind of a full circle to kind of get back into team marketing, and but I'm excited to be back into the sport.
So tell me, what's your primary role with the Nets as it relates to, well, what your primary role is? I'm
sure.
Relating to community outreach.
Sure. So I'm the Vice President of Team Marketing and Community Relations. So I oversee brand strategy, marketing communication, and our brand activation as it relates to the Brooklyn Nets, the New York Islanders, and the Long Island Nets, which is our G League affiliate that plays out at NYCB Live out in Long Island. And I also oversee our community relations efforts for the teams as well. So I was very excited. I'm glad we're here to talk about community. When I found out, and I've been with the company, with Brooklyn Sports Entertainment, for a little over 5 months now, and when I found out that the community group was kind of something that I would be able to kind of shape and guide, I was extremely excited about it. So.
Right, great. Well, I mean, you spoke of the Islanders, who may not be in this space for very long.
That's true. Yeah, there's lots of high-level discussions that's being had way over my pay grade of kind of how that's going to play out. You know, we're glad that they're here now and that they're playing with us, but you just never know what's going to happen in the future.
Right. Well, so I know it's often a part of pro teams' kind of activities, either off season or even during the season, to be involved with the community.
Sure.
But what you're working on is kind of beyond like just the NBA cares, which if you're watching a pro game, you'll see a PSA for or something like that. Do you work with NBA cares? But what do you do beyond that?
Yeah, so we do have NBA platforms that we look to customize and expand specifically for the Brooklyn community, but we also look for very unique opportunities that kind of are more connected with our fan base as well. And one of which that we work very closely, we've done just recently kind of our second inaugural Pride Night, where we connect and celebrate the LGBTQ community. We had a former player on our team named Jason Collins, who was the first kind of professional player, openly gay player, to kind of explain his orientation to the world across all the 4 major sports in North America.
Right. It was a huge moment.
Yeah, it was a huge moment in the sport. It just never been done. It was a lot of things that always have been in the closet, so to speak. So for him to come out took a lot of courage for him to do. Yeah. And so we wanted to make sure that we recognize that, and we had him for a pre-game panel, reception. We also had other panelists there, and we just discussed kind of the convergence between those type of issues and sport, and it was a great event.
I mean, speaking of community outreach in the NBA and the NBA's place in that, I know the NBA, more than other major sports leagues, has been more vocal, and teams have been more vocal. I mean, you saw, it was I don't know, it was this week or last week with the shooting of the unarmed black man in Sacramento, and the way that the Sacramento Kings responded to that, and some of the players and former players like DeMarcus Cousins, who said he was going to pay for the funeral of the young man. And you know, these issues and policing issues and Black Lives Matter is a huge thing in Brooklyn. I wonder how you're intersecting with that and your role. Yeah,
well, we applaud the NBA for kind of being a leader amongst all the professional sports teams and kind of being on the forefront of a lot of those issues. And I think they recognize, and we also recognize, that a lot of the NBA players come from these communities. So you have to support these communities in a way to make sure. And from a Brooklyn perspective, with the Nets, we know that Brooklyn is a very diverse borough. And we want to always celebrate diversity and inclusion, because that's really what Brooklyn stands for. And we want to make sure that we try to portray that on and off the court.
Right. Well, so here's a tough question, because I know the Nets haven't had, very many great seasons in the past few years. A lot of turnover. How does that hamper your ability to have players kind of connect to the community and feel kind of integrated into it in a way that they feel like, oh, I know this place, I know how and where to make an impact? Yeah,
and that's a great question, and I think, but it's actually a very simple one, because I think, we can't, being in the front office, working on the business side, on the marketing side, we can't control the wins and losses that take place on the court. But what I always tell my team is that the 2 things that we can control is kind of the consistency of our marketing message and what we do in the community. Those 2 things we actually have physical control over to orchestrate and to try to get done. So what we do in the community and how we helped try to help build and create connections, meaningful connections in the community is something that we definitely can do.
Right.
And the players have been awesome. I mean, they have really stepped up in anything we've asked from them. They've been willing to do, as long as they're not on the road, right, to kind of help us with. So that's something, and it's a platform with me being there just a short time. It's something that I really want to continue to expand.
Right. So you can't make any recommendations being like, you got to trade for this guy, or no, we got to do this.
No. So we have,
so
we have Sean Marks, who's our general manager, who we're very excited about and happy with, who's been here now for a couple of years, and Coach Kenny Atkinson. And they've done a great job with a very kind of young core group of guys. And they're looking to expand, and I think so really the player development story is something that I think people, if you follow the Brooklyn Nets, you'll see like our brand mantra is called "We Go Hard," and so it means that we're always going to fight. We have Brooklyn grit, and we're going to go after it every night, regardless of who we're playing against. And I think if you look at how they played this year, and so we're actually coming up on the end of the season, they've fought very hard. They haven't been on the plus side of a lot of those, but they've been in a lot of games very closely. They've been one of the teams that have played in the most games decided by 5 points or less in the NBA. So they're always fighting every night, and there's a bright future there too.
So there's no tanking going on.
There's no tanking. Our general manager said in the beginning that we're here to compete, and we're here to go hard every night. One
of the things I've watched and I've tried to pay some attention to is that the Nets have a Brooklyn-born player. Maybe he's in the development league right now, Isaiah Whitehead.
Yes, Isaiah Whitehead, yes.
And I wonder how that helps. And he's shown some promise actually in some of the NBA games he's played.
He has, and also in the G League as well.
Yeah. I wonder, does it help to have a local on the team help with your mission?
Well, it's interesting because we've had a couple of focus groups. This is just totally on the side, and we've asked people, why do you love the team, or why are you part of it? And one, they just love the grit, they love the team. But some people say, hey, one guy actually said, hey, I grew up with the guy, and I'm always going to support him, whoever he is. So it doesn't hurt, but I think overall, it's the team and what we try to portray and the product on the court that's eventually going to grow the fan base overall. But with local players, definitely doesn't hurt.
Right, and a local player then who can help you with some of the community outreach, perhaps, who knows the neighborhoods, who knows the borough.
Yeah, he's from Coney Island area. Went to Lincoln High School, so yeah, and he's done things down in the community that neighborhoods that he's very familiar with, and we've actually helped support him in the past and things that he's done down there, and will continue to as long as he's with the team. So yeah, so definitely it does not hurt at all.
Great. Well, Marcus, it's so great having you on the show and coming in to talk about the Nets, and we'll hope to have you back on in the future when you guys have other initiatives or there are other developments with the team.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Really excited. I think there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of things that we want to continue to push, and because we really want to curate a very strong connection. So this summer we're going to be doing some very fun things. We're going to continue to expand our summer through the Nets Basketball Academy, our summer camps and free clinics, and look to really connect and hopefully have a strong conversation in Brooklyn basketball this summer and tie in with local basketball tournaments. And we're actually hosting our own basketball tournament in June at Brooklyn Bridge Park. And we're going to tie in with local street festivals and block parties. So we're very excited. So we're in the midst of those plans right now for the summer. But it's all about, giving back and actually trying to make the lives better for people that are a part of our community and support the Brooklyn Nets and the borough as a whole. So we're very excited.
Great. I'm glad you added those details because I'd meant to and I was supposed to ask you about them.
Of course.
I appreciate you including them. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Thanks a lot.
And thanks for tuning in on the show. Tomorrow we'll have a conversation with Assistant Commissioner at the Department of Transportation, joining us to talk about Vision Zero and how the city plans to cut down even further on horrific accidents. Plus, some folks who participated in the March for Our Lives will tell us what they saw and heard. Hope you can join us.